Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the first ever InfoWeather Catholic Media newscast. Today is January 5th, 2021, and I'm your host, Chris Dixon. Let's get right into it with the rundown for today's edition of the newscast. It'll be around 25 to 30 minutes long, so sit in, snuggle tight, and let's listen. We got Catholic news, politics, weather, sports, and COVID-19. Let's do it, beginning with, of course, Catholic news, our bishops, the church worldwide, the impact of COVID-19 in the church, and this week in liturgy. There are four main stories with four bishops associated with them. The first one is Bishop Moses Chikwi, the auxiliary bishop in Kenya. He was released from his kidnapping last week. He was kidnapped for approximately 5 days before being released. He is back safe, along with his driver. The driver of his vehicle was also kidnapped. They are both back safe now. An archbishop in Belarus was allowed to return to his country to celebrate Christmas masses after he denounced the current government and various other things that the government, of course, did not like. He was supporting protesters of the outcome of the Belarusian election, and so they threw him into exile. The government did. They allowed him to come back to celebrate Christmas Mass. He did so. During that, he submitted his resignation to Pope Francis because he turned 75 years old. So that's something that you would expect. Sorry about that. He turned 75 years old. That's something that you would expect. Pope Francis has accepted his resignation. That is what's going on with that bishop in the news. Here in the United States, the bishop of Bridgeport, Connecticut, got COVID-19, has no symptoms, but he couldn't attend the ordination ceremony for one of his priests earlier this week. However, there is an auxiliary bishop, and that deacon was indeed ordained to the priesthood this past week. So prayers for him. And as well, across the world, we have the Eastern Catholic churches. One of those is the Maronite Catholic Church, and the leader of that is Cardinal Rai of Lebanon. And there he expressed concern over governmental tensions occurring in the area. If you know anything about Lebanon government, it's three main controlling groups control the government in terms of religion: the Muslims, the Eastern Orthodox, and the Maronite Catholics. And those three relatively balance out power, but right now, and for the past several years, it's been a really tumultuous time for them in balancing those three perspectives, not only in their local worldview, but also worldview. And so that's something that they are very desperately trying to reconcile, and the cardinal definitely has some concerns about that, as you would expect him to. Across the world, we do have two good news stories, kind of. One's a bad news and one's a good news. The bad news is that the Archbishop-elect of Dublin, Ireland, is going to have a diocese where over half of their priests are over the age of 70, which is a problem because they're going to die because they're old at some point, and there's no priest to replace them. So that is the bad news. The good news is that in Argentina, a boy was saved from a stray bullet. The bullet wasn't fired at the boy, but he was saved from the crucifix around his neck. The bullet came, hit the crucifix that was hanging around his neck, saved his life. He got some minor injuries, but he was in and out of the hospital in less than an hour. Absolutely amazing story that you know, if you were a 9-year-old boy saved by the crucifix around your neck, you'd be telling that story everywhere. Just an amazing story, not necessarily a miracle, probably just a coincidence, but definitely a cool, good news story for you today. COVID-19 is, of course, affecting the church greatly. In the aforementioned Archdiocese of Dublin, the church income is down 80%, which is, of course, significant. It's the same in many of the parishes and dioceses here in the United States. So that is of major concern. The only bishop in Iceland has called on the government to end the 10-person limit at masses. Of course, that probably began as early as March, and so people really haven't been able to attend Mass as frequently as they like to or would normally, or maybe not even at all. So the bishop, the only bishop in Iceland, has really said that he wants them to end that because the faithful need to attend Mass and receive the Holy Eucharist. It's not anything too wild if you're somewhat associated with Catholicism, but alas, here we are. And finally, the bishops of Scotland are, of course, unhappy with the lockdown, which began yesterday and extends to the end of the month. We'll have more about that lockdown and more COVID-19 information at the end of the video. This week in liturgy, today is the feast of St. John Neumann. Tomorrow is the solemnity of the Epiphany of the Lord, unless they're in the United States, and we already did that. So it's the feast of St. Andre Bessette, optionally. Tomorrow, another optional feast, a Christmas weekday, as well as the rest of the week. Sunday is the feast of the Baptism of the Lord, the end of the Christmas season and beginning of ordinary time, which will go throughout next week. And then after that will be the second Sunday of ordinary time, which will occur, of course, on Sunday the 17th. In politics, we, of course, are talking about the feud between Biden and Trump and how that's all going to go down here in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The 117th United States Congress and Georgia's Senate elections. First off, Joe Biden's inauguration is set to occur on January 20th. He'll become the 46th president of the United States, Kamala Harris becoming the vice president. The two really have some significant strides that they're making when they become president and vice president, respectively. Joe Biden becoming the second Catholic to the presidency, Kamala Harris becoming the first woman to the vice presidency, as well as one of only, I think she's the second, but there may have been more, person of color to the vice presidency. So definitely an important day coming 15 days from now at the White House, or really the steps of the Capitol. But you know what I mean. Trump has still not conceded the election, may not attend the inauguration ceremony. If he does not choose to, he would be the fourth to make that decision. Of course, being assassinated isn't making that decision, so none of those are shown here. But John Adams, John Quincy Adams, and Andrew Johnson are the three other presidents to not attend their successors' inauguration ceremony. A joint session of Congress will meet to certify the election results tomorrow. And, well, why tomorrow? Why not now? That's a big question, isn't it? Well, there's an election today, for those who didn't know, in Georgia. But before we get to the election in Georgia, let's talk real quick about the 117th United States Congress. It consists of 222 Democrats, 211 Republicans, 2 vacancies, and led by the former and now current, of course, still Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi got reelected or rechosen, however you want to put it, to be Speaker of the House. A couple days ago, the Democrats, 5 of the Democrats sided with the Republicans in not electing Pelosi, but Pelosi nonetheless is the Speaker of the House again. The Senate does pen some results today, and this is a very important thing for the Republicans, because if they lose the 2 elections taking place today, then that'll make the makeup of Congress 50-50 in the Senate, which would be led by Kamala Harris, which would mean the Democrats have control of the Senate. They would also have control of the House, as you can see simply from the numbers right there. And they would have control of the presidency, which means Joe Biden and his administration could pass significant lawmaking endeavors throughout the next several days. Anyway, next several years, rather. The Senate consists of 46 Democrats, 2 independents, and 51 Republicans. It's really only 50 Republicans because one of those seats is being contested today. There's 1 vacancy which will be filled today as well. It's currently led by Mike Pence until it is led by Kamala Harris on January 20th. Now, of course, the first controversy of the 117th United States Congress wasn't even a piece of law. In fact, it was the prayer that opened the Congress, and it ended with the words, "a man and a woman," which, of course, is a lack of understanding of the representative's fault of literally anything. Also, he just kind of ruined God and his supposed prayer. But that's beside the point. I'm talking about the actual text of the prayer, not the ending of the prayer, which also doesn't even make sense. It's not something that one can get mad about for being heresy or whatever, but it just doesn't even make sense. So you can't really get mad at it. You can just question how dumb people are, and that's kind of what we're doing here today. Not sure why it just flipped back there, but anyways, the Georgia Senate election is taking place right now. I believe the polling centers close within the next hour or two. Neither candidate got the majority, so the rule in Georgia, if you don't get 50% plus one, there's a runoff for the Senate. And David Perdue, pretty commanding over John Ossoff, the Democrat. However, we have this runoff for a reason, so you would expect Perdue to get it, but you never know. The Georgia Senate special election runoff is also taking place. Again, neither of them got 50% or more. There were many candidates in there. As you can see, Doug Collins and Deborah Jackson also in there getting a significant amount of the vote. Doug Collins getting 20%, but he didn't make it the runoff. Only the top two candidates are eligible to do that. And so Kelly Loeffler, the one who currently holds the seat, that's why I said 51 Republicans, one of it's contested. Loeffler is in the seat until this is figured out. So we'll see exactly what happens tonight. Expected to be a very close election, of course, as you would expect. And again, her contender is supposed Reverend Raphael Warnock. Now, of course, he is a reverend, I guess, and a pastor of a Baptist, supposedly, church, but he has no understanding of Christian doctrine or tradition or history or what Christians believe on various things. So really is not deserving of the title reverend at all. His tweets prove it. Go out and take a look there yourself and draw your own conclusion. But for now, we're putting reverend in quotations because it's not really an accurate description of his status over the Christian faithful. Also, let's get into some other stuff. And that other stuff is going to be weather. Winter weather first. We do have really no major snowfall events outside of the Rockies, which of course always get snowfall events this time of year and really throughout the year. The first major thing is going to happen between day 3 and 4, which is, let me pull up a calendar here. Which is the 7th and the 8th in the North Carolina, Virginia area. By the time we get to the day after the 9th, it's going to be the 8th and the 9th. Or I guess really just the 9th. I'll get it one of these days. The 9th is northern Texas, the Oklahoma Panhandle, New Mexico, Colorado, and parts of Kansas. The day after that's going to be Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and parts of Mississippi. And then day 7, a week from now, that is on the 10th, it's going to be, or the 11th is what it actually is. The 11th is going to be North Carolina, Virginia again, as well as West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and much of the other mid-Atlantic regions. Severe weather really isn't of concern at this point in the year. However, we already have had 2 tornadoes in California. They occurred on the same day. One of them pictured here with mostly cloudy skies. The tornado kind of like sticking out right there. Snow on the ground. Very cool sight. Already been nominated for Tornado of the Year which isn't really actually a title. It's just something that's thrown around when a cool tornado happens. It happens multiple times a year, but this one is definitely a very cool sight to see. In the tropics, we only have one current tropical cyclone located in the southern Indian Ocean. So take India, go south of the equator, and there you are in the southern Indian Ocean. No major threat to land, and no major threats to land really through the next 2 weeks either, as we can see in those hatched red areas. There's a moderate risk of formation next week. We'll talk more about that, of course, when we get to next week, in next week's episode, if I get around to doing it. And we're also watching the Western Pacific, which could have eventual effects on the Philippines. So that is also of concern. Here in Ohio, it's going to be cloudy in the mid-upper 30s all week. Maybe some sun by the time we get to Friday, but don't count on it. Potentially tad warmer as we enter into next week. In Oklahoma, although it was warm today, it's going to be relatively cool the rest of the week. Lower to mid 40s most of the week. Rain tomorrow. There's really not a high or a low temperature. It's kind of just constant all day. Relatively boring. We'll have sun to start next week. And we do have a chance to hit or exceed 50 degrees, especially as we get towards the middle of the week. And now for sports. The college football playoff championship is going to be hopefully occurring within the next week, as well as the NFL playoffs, March Madness, and the beginning of the NHL season. Let's take a look at all four of those things now. First off is the college football playoff between number 3 Ohio State versus number 1 Alabama. Alabama is expected to win by 7.5 points. Take place 8 p.m. Monday night, January 11th. It could be delayed, and if it is, it'll take place on January 18th, same time, same place, Miami Gardens Hard Rock Stadium there in Florida. There is potential concern for that, especially with Ohio State supposedly having some COVID issues at the moment. As of now, however, the game is still expected to be January 11th. It'll air on ESPN, over under 75 points, scorefest. Not even the Big 12 in there, but still scorefest, no defense, haha. Okay, enough of that. Let's get into the NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs, Green Bay Packers moving right along already, getting the first round bye. Wild cards happening this week. Let's take a look, see if the Browns can actually do something for once in their lives. Highly doubt it. They're playing the Steelers. So that's going to be the end of that. Maybe next year there's a chance that the Browns do something with their life, but I doubt it. March Madness was announced that it will be on this year. It will take place. All the games will happen in Indiana, various colleges, universities, stadiums, and convention centers hosting the people that are going to stay at Marriott hotels. They're going to hang out, have fun, whatever. But those places have donated their resources, cleaning crews and whatnot, to keeping it safe, COVID safe, make sure everybody's all right. We'll see exactly what happens, but as of now, it sounds like a decent plan. Sort of like the professional bubbles. It's going to be something like that. No delays are expected. As of now, it's going to start and end as scheduled. So definitely going to be cool to watch March Madness occur in the first time in what seems like forever. The NHL will begin in 1 week and 1 day from today on January 13th. The first Blue Jackets game will be January 14th at 8 p.m. There are 4 new divisions for this year. The first one is the North Division, all the Canadian teams. Second one, the West Division, all of the teams on the West Coast and sort of more inland. You see St. Louis is definitely more inland. Minnesota Wild, definitely more inland. But it is what it is. The Central Division is, well, really everybody in the central United States, also including the Carolina Hurricanes, in the Florida teams also. I guess that's really the only oddity there. And then all the teams in the Northeast are in the East Division. So that pretty much makes sense. It just geographic somewhat. So there you go. And I know you've missed it. I've missed it. Let's get right into it. This is COVID-19 coronavirus video update number 63. I'm Chris Dixon. I'm kidding. Anyways, let's get into it. Current daily new cases per capita. You see a general downward trend. That's what that line is in the center of each state. You can see how it's doing with time, the state's doing with time. The highest daily new cases is Arizona, and then California, of course, Rhode Island. But generally, for the most part, most states are heading down from, their worst, where they were at in November and December. The breaking it down into the counties, the total cases per capita worse in the Dakotas, some other states in the some other counties throughout the plains, a county here and there in Georgia and Florida, stuff like that. Nothing too crazy. And moving right along to the deaths per capita, highest throughout several states, the highest of which is in New Jersey, also New York of note, the Dakotas, the rest of the Northeast, and Louisiana and Mississippi of note. Of course, this trend line is always going to be trending up because cumulative means that we keep on adding to it. We can't really undie people. Nobody's pulling a Jesus and getting resurrected. You do see Vermont with only 23 cumulative deaths across 100,000 people. I say only 23, that's still a lot of people, but you get the point compared to like New York's 217, or New Jersey's rather 217, that's rather impressive. Looking at the total deaths across the United States, we see several counties that really haven't had many effects, including it looks like one county in Georgia, a couple in West Virginia, Vermont, Kentucky, maybe a few in Texas, New Mexico, much of Utah. So many states are doing just fine with the virus, but you can also tell from this where all the cities are located. The darker colors relative to their areas, of course, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Chicago, Detroit, New York, Boston, Miami, Houston. All of those states you can pick out, or all those cities you can pick out pretty easily with that very dark color. But also some of the smaller cities you can pick out. Even Salt Lake City, even though there's not many counties around it with data, you do see that where that's located. Where St. Louis, you can tell where St. Louis is. You can tell where Oklahoma City, Dallas, Fort Worth, Columbus, all of these cities you can tell where they're located at just based off of this. Again, Pittsburgh, Minneapolis. I can keep on going all day naming cities just by looking at the maps here. I guess really you can't tell where New Orleans is at. Maybe there's that one little parish right there that you can tell the difference in. But most of Louisiana is a mess anyways, as it is. Boom roasted. Current hospitalizations per 100,000 per capita there. Generally on the decline again. Worse in Arizona. Again, fine in Vermont. Again, generally this has been the trend. Most data points do vary significantly from state to state, and you know what those states are. The rankings of the top 10 states with active cases has remained relatively the same throughout the pandemic, which makes sense because certain states have higher populations than others. But definitely something that we're interested in looking at. Again, on the decline, which is fantastic. Speaking of the decline, it is heading our way. If we didn't wear masks and didn't have the vaccine, this wave would be over come the end of the month. However, we do have the vaccine, that's that blue line, and we do have masks, that's that green line. Everybody wore their mask, it'd be more effective than the vaccine. However, that's not the case, and here we are. But it looks like the peak has passed, and we will be heading downward. Vaccine's going to be rolling out. It's a bit behind schedule. We'll talk more about vaccines on the next and final slide of the video here. We got a lot packed in here. United States over 21,000 cases. Recoveries nearing 13,000, putting us at 8 million currently in the United States. California over 1 million cases. currently. So that's an eighth of your data points right there. Florida and New York also above 500,000. Several other states above 250,000, as you can see right here. Worldwide, over 85 million cases. We're at 1.8 million deaths, and currently 23 million cases as it stands right now. Overall, across the course of the pandemic, the United States leading the way with 21.5, India at 10.5, Brazil over 7.5, Russia, United Kingdom, due to that very rapidly spreading strain that we'll talk about here in a second. Several other European countries also leading the way throughout the world. Now, you will notice there is a discrepancy between who's reached 1 million and who hasn't, between the picture in the middle and the chart off to the side. Reason for that is the chart off to the side uses Worldometer's numbers. The map in the middle uses Johns Hopkins numbers. So this is just showing you how inconclusive lots of the data is, but it is what it is. Scotland going into its lockdown. England enters its third lockdown. The faster moving B117 variant, which was of course found in the United Kingdom first, is now in 33 countries. 4 United States. Those states are California, Colorado, Florida, and New York. In the United States, 4.5 million people have gotten their first dose. That's 30% of the supply that we have right now in the United States. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. That's all for now. Chris Dixon, InfoWeather, Catholic Media.